My name is Bethany Baker. I'm 31. The morning of my wedding, I walked into a church with 120 empty seats and a voicemail from my mother telling half the town I was mentally unstable. She'd called every guest, every single one. Between 10 at night and 2 in the morning, my mother sat at her kitchen table with a printed copy of my guest list and dialed 120 numbers. She told them the wedding was off. She told them I was having a breakdown. She told them to stay home. My dad sent one text, just one. Come home. No daughter of mine marries without my permission. I stood in that church in my bare feet, garment bag over my shoulder, staring at rows of chairs with nobody in them. The florist had already set the arrangements. White peonies, my favorite. They smelled like a promise no one showed up to keep. But I didn't cry. I pulled out my phone and called one number, and what happened in the next 60 minutes changed everything. Not just my wedding day, but who I am. Before I take you back to that morning, if this story hits close to home, take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you truly connect with it. Drop your location and local time in the comments. I love knowing where you're listening from. Now, let me take you back 3 weeks before the wedding, to the night my mother looked me in the eye and said, "You will regret this." Millbrook, Georgia has a population of about 8,000. The kind of town where your mail carrier knows your dog's name and your Sunday pew has your family's initials carved into the armrest. If something happens at the post office on Monday, the Baptist church has heard about it by Wednesday. My mother, Diane Holloway, thrived in that ecosystem. She organized the church bake sale every spring. She dropped off casseroles when someone's husband got sick. She volunteered for the school board even after I graduated. Everyone in Millbrook knew Mrs. Holloway as the woman who gave and gave and gave. She called my florist to change my flowers to something I'm allergic to. Dad? Long pause. She's just trying to be involved. I hung up and I called every one of my vendors that night to put a password on my accounts. The calls started 3 days later. Not from my mother, from everyone around her. Aunt Gloria, my mother's younger sister, rang first. "Bethany, honey, your mama says you won't let her help with the wedding. That true?" She tried to change my flowers to something I'm allergic to. Well, I'm sure she didn't mean it that way. Then came Cousin Ray. "Diane says you've been disrespectful, Beth. She's real torn up about it." Then my mother's friend Patty from the church quilting circle. "Sweetie, your mom has been in tears at Bible study. She says you threatened to uninvite her." One by one they called, each with a different fragment of the same distorted story, each convinced they were getting the whole picture. By Thursday, Aunt Gloria called again. This time her voice was harder. "Bethany, I'm going to be straight with you. If you cut your mother out, don't expect anyone in this family at your wedding." "Is that a threat, Aunt Gloria?" "It's reality, sweetheart." I sat on my kitchen floor after that call, back against the cabinet, and looked at the guest list taped to the refrigerator. 120 names. I ran my finger down the columns and counted. 83 of them were family or family adjacent. People who got their invitations because my mother insisted. People who went to her church, her book club, her potlucks. People who would believe whatever Diane told them, because Diane told them first. The guest list had never been mine. It had been hers. I picked up my phone and texted Margot 2 sentences. "Start confirming the second list." Her reply came in under a minute. "Already done. 187 confirmed. Still counting." I read the number twice, set my phone down, and for the first time in weeks, I took a full breath. I stopped by the restaurant the following Tuesday to finalize the catering order. Ruth was behind the counter, rolling biscuit dough, flour up to her elbows, gray hair tied back with a red bandana. "How's your mama taking all this?" she asked without looking up. I leaned against the counter. "She's making it hard." Ruth stopped rolling out of the school talent show in front of every parent in that auditorium. "You were 11. You mispronounced one word during your speech." And she walked right up to that stage, grabbed your arm, and said in front of everyone, "She's not ready for any of this." I remembered. My face burned just hearing it. "I watched you walk out of that gym with your head down," Ruth said, "and I made a promise to myself that if I ever got the chance to stand up for you, I would." She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a business card. On the back, she'd written our personal cell number and one word, emergencies. "Whatever happens, Bethany, you call me." I started to say she didn't have to. "I fed half this town for 30 years, she said, picking up the rolling pin again. "When I say I'll be there, I'll be there." On the drive home, I put Ruth's card in my wallet behind my driver's license. I didn't know then how soon I'd need it. Uncle Dean called on a Wednesday. I hadn't heard from him in 2 months. He lived in Savannah, 4 hours away, and we mostly kept in touch through birthday cards and the occasional text. "Hey kid," he said. His voice was rougher than I remembered. 64 years and a lifetime of keeping quiet had worn grooves in it. "I heard what your mother's doing." "From who?" "Your daddy called me last week, first time in a long while." I sat down on my bed. Dean and Jerry had been close as boys. But when Jerry married Diane 35 years ago, Dean had told him straight out, "That woman is going to isolate you from everyone who loves you." Diane found out. She cut Dean out of the family for almost a decade. He was only allowed back when I was 8, on the condition that he never interfered in family matters. "I want you to know something," Dean said, right on my bedspread. "Uncle Dean?" "Yeah. Will you come to my wedding?" He laughed short and warm, like the crackle of a good fire. Wild horses couldn't keep me away. Already booked the flight. I smiled for the first time in days. "Thank you," I said. "Don't thank me. Just save me a seat." We hung up. I sat in my room and thought about the 2 phone calls I'd had that week. Ruth's card in my wallet, Dean's flight already booked. 2 people who saw what my mother was and chose to stand next to me anyway. I didn't know yet that Uncle Dean would do something at my wedding that would make 200 people cry. Sunday morning, 1 week before the wedding, Millbrook Baptist Church. I almost didn't go. Marcus said I didn't have to, but I'd sat in that pew every Sunday for 25 years, and I wasn't about to let Diane Holloway take that from me too. The service was fine. Pastor Green preached about patience. Ironic. Afterward, everyone migrated to the fellowship hall for coffee and donuts. 40-some people milling around in their Sunday best. I was pouring cream into my cup when my mother stood up from a folding chair in the center of the room. She pressed a tissue to her eye. "I just want y'all to pray for my Bethany." Her voice cracked in exactly the right places. "She's going through a really hard time. The wedding might not happen. I don't know what's wrong with her lately." Every head turned toward me. I could feel it. 40 pairs of eyes. Some sympathetic, some curious, some already writing the story in their heads. I sat my coffee down. My hand was steady. "The wedding is happening," I said. "Saturday at this church. I would love to see every one of you there." My mother's tissue hand dropped an inch. "Honey, you're confused. We need to talk about this as a family." "We're not talking, Mom. You're performing, and I'm done being your audience." The fellowship hall went so quiet I could hear the air conditioning hum. Mrs. Patterson near the window put her donut down. Mr. and Mrs. Burke exchanged a glance. Pastor Green stood by the coffee urn watching everything. My mother's face went through 3 expressions in 2 seconds. Shock, fury, and then a mask of wounded dignity. "I'm just worried about my daughter," she whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. I picked up my coffee and walked out. After the service, Pastor Green found me in the parking lot. "Bethany, the church is booked for Saturday. Your name is on the contract. No one can change that but you." I nodded. "Thank you, Pastor." "Go have your wedding," he said. That night, my phone logged 11 missed calls from my mother. I didn't answer a single one. At 9:15, a text from Diane. "You humiliated me in front of the entire congregation. You are selfish, ungrateful, and you will regret this for the rest of your life." At 9:42, from Jerry. "Your mother hasn't stopped crying. Are you happy now?" At 10:08, from Aunt Gloria. "You just broke your mother's heart in public. Don't call me." I sat at my kitchen table and read them one by one. Each message glowed on the screen like a small, bright wound. I read them the way I read patient charts at work, carefully, clinically, looking for the data underneath the distress. The data said this: every person in my mother's orbit had received the same version of events. Bethany was cruel. Bethany was unstable. "Please don't contact her right now." The same script, the same trembling voice, the same lie repeated 120 times between 10 at night and 2 in the morning. Some people questioned her. "Is Bethany okay? Should we call her?" My mother said no, said the family needed space, said contacting Bethany would only make things worse. My father sat in his recliner in the living room. The TV was on. He heard every call. He didn't say a word. He didn't stop her. He didn't pick up his own phone. But 3 people on the guest list, when they couldn't reach me, called Margot instead. At 1 in the morning, Margot's phone lit up. She was already awake. Saturday, October 12th, 6:30 a.m. I opened my eyes, reached for my phone, and turned off the alarm. The champagne glass from last night sat empty on the nightstand. Margot was already up. I could hear coffee brewing in the kitchen. Then I turned off silent mode. 47 text messages, 23 missed calls. I opened the first text from Linda, my coworker at Millbrook General. "Beth, your mom called me last night. Is the wedding really off?" My stomach dropped. I scrolled message after message. The same question in different words. "Is it true? Are you okay? Your mother said you're having a breakdown." Margot appeared in the doorway. She was already dressed, hair done, earrings on. "She did it," I said. "I know. I've been up since 1. How bad?" "She called every person on your list, all 120. Some of them called me when they couldn't reach you." I sat on the edge of the bed, garment bag hanging on the closet door, shoes lined up underneath, flowers arriving at 8. "How many do we have?" I asked. 212 confirmed on the backup list. The first ones are already on their way. I stood up, walked to the bathroom, washed my face, looked at myself in the mirror. Red eyes, messy hair, the face of a woman whose mother just tried to erase her wedding from existence. I drove to the church. Margot followed. The doors were open.
The florist had come early. White peonies on every pew end, the altar framed in greenery. It was beautiful, and it was completely empty. Not one person in 120 seats. My phone buzzed. A text from Jerry. "Come home. No daughter of mine marries without my permission." I read it, set the phone on the nearest pew, and I went to put on my wedding dress. I need you to hear this. Standing in that empty church, I wasn't angry at my mother anymore. I was free, because for the first time I wasn't performing for her audience. I was about to meet mine. If you've ever felt like you needed someone else's permission to live your life, stay with me. The next part of this story is for you. 8:15 a.m. I was in the church's dressing room buttoning the last pearl on my sleeve when I heard a diesel engine rumble into the parking lot. Brakes squealed, a door slammed, then footsteps, fast, heavy, purposeful, coming down the side hallway. Ruth Pettin appeared in the doorway. 68 years old, white apron over a navy blue dress, flowers still on her left elbow. Behind her, 3 of her restaurant staff carried aluminum trays stacked 4 high. She looked at the empty fellowship hall through the open door, looked at me in my wedding dress, didn't ask a single question. "I brought enough food for 300, she said, just in case." She turned and started directing her crew. Trays on tables, tablecloths from a box in her truck, napkins, serving utensils, a 10-gallon tub of sweet tea. She moved through that church like a woman who'd been preparing for this her entire life. I stood in the dressing room doorway, one hand on the frame, and felt something crack open in my chest. "Ruth," I said. My voice broke on her name. She stopped, walked back to me, put both flour-dusted hands on my shoulders. "Margot called me at 2 a.m., she said. "I was already awake. I'd been waiting for your mother to pull something. You didn't have to. That woman took a lot from you, honey."
Pastor Green looked out at the congregation and smiled. "We're here today," he said, "because love showed up anyway, even when the plan fell apart." A murmur of amens rippled through the room. Marcus spoke his vows first. He didn't read from a card. He looked at me and talked the way he always does, plain, direct, like he was telling me something important over coffee. "Beth, I build things for a living. Today, I'm building a life with you, and no one gets to demolish that." I heard Linda whisper, "Oh my God," from the 3rd row. Then it was my turn. I'd written my vows 3 times and thrown out every version, so I said what was true. "Marcus, you were the first person who told me I didn't need permission to be happy. It took me a while, but I believe you now." 214 people applauded. Ruth cried openly. She didn't even try to hide it. Mr. Calloway from Birch Street gave a 2-finger whistle that echoed off the vaulted ceiling. Linda's bouquet was falling apart, and she was holding it together with one hand while clapping with the other. "By the power vested in me," Pastor Green said, "by the state of Georgia and this community right here, I now pronounce you husband and wife." Marcus kissed me. The church erupted. Margot counted heads on her clipboard. 214, nearly 100 more than my original guest list. I held Marcus's hand and looked toward the side window. Through the glass, I could see the far edge of the parking lot. My father's blue truck sat under the oak tree, engine off, driver's seat occupied. He'd come, but he hadn't walked in. I looked at my father's truck for exactly 3 seconds. Then I looked back at my husband, and I chose forward. The reception happened in the church's side yard under a canopy of old live oaks. Ruth's crew had set up 2 long tables with enough food to feed the whole town. fried chicken, collard greens, biscuits, 3 different kinds of pie.
Not dramatically, not with any announcement. They just shifted. Ruth saw Diane at the grocery store the following Saturday. They ended up at the meat counter at the same time. Ruth didn't say a word. She looked at Diane, held the gaze for exactly long enough, and turned away. Aunt Gloria called me for the first time since her "don't call me" text. "I owe you an apology," she said. "Your mother told me things that weren't true." "I know," I said. "Thank you for calling." That same week, Diane posted a photo on Facebook, an old picture of me at 6 years old sitting on her lap. The caption read, "My heart is broken. Please pray for our family." I heard about it from Margot. 4 likes, 0 comments, no prayer hand emojis, nothing. Then Jerry called. His voice was tired in a way I'd never heard. Not exhausted, but emptied, like a man who'd finally stopped running from something. "I saw the pictures," he said. "You looked beautiful, baby girl." Then silence, a long, hollow pause, and he hung up. 1 month after the wedding, Uncle Dean called. "Your daddy came by my house last night," he said. "First time in 5 years. Sat on my porch and didn't say much." "What did he say?" "Mostly nothing. Drank half a beer. Stared at the yard. Then he asked me one question. I waited. Did I lose her?" The words landed somewhere in my ribs. "What did you tell him?" I told him the truth. I said, "I don't know, Jerry. That's up to Bethany." I sat with that for a long time after we hung up. I didn't feel satisfied. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt like a woman who'd lost something she could never fully name. The fantasy of the father she'd wanted him to be. Dean told me more over the following weeks. Jerry had started going for walks in the morning, alone, something he'd never done. Diane always dictated their schedule, their meals, their social calendar.
But now he walked to the coffee shop on Oak Street by himself, ordered a black coffee, and sat at a corner table reading the newspaper. Neighbors noticed. Hank Moore told Dean he'd seen Jerry sitting there 3 mornings in a row, alone, looking like a man who'd just moved to a new town and didn't know anyone yet. I think losing me was the first time my father realized he'd been losing himself for 35 years. Thought the recliner, the ball games, the silent dinners, that wasn't peace. It was a man who traded his voice for quiet so long ago that he'd forgotten he ever had one. A lot of people ask me, did your father ever reach out again? The answer is complicated. 3 months after the wedding, my mother's world had gotten noticeably smaller. She lost her position on the church events board, officially a voluntary step back, but everyone in Millbrook knew the truth. The charity committee she'd co-chaired for a decade held elections and chose someone else. Her annual Christmas cookie exchange, which she'd hosted every December since I was a child, happened without her for the first time. But Diane Hollet did not collapse. She didn't apologize. She didn't call a therapist. She got angry. Dean told me she'd been telling anyone who still listened that Marcus had brainwashed me, that I'd been manipulated by outsiders, that one day I'd come to my senses and come home. I heard these things secondhand, through Dean, through Marco, through the quiet grapevine of a small town. I didn't respond. I didn't correct her. I didn't post anything online. I didn't need to. The truth had already done its work. 214 people had seen it in person. Diane did not go to therapy. She did not meet my one condition. My phone stayed quiet. The boundary held. Some people wanted a different ending to this part. They wanted me to say my mother broke down, called me sobbing, showed up at my door with apologies and a willingness to change. That would make a prettier story. But this is my life. And in my life, some people choose anger over accountability. Some people would rather lose their daughter than admit they were wrong. I didn't set that boundary to punish her. I set it to survive. And every morning that I woke up in a house where no one monitored my calls, criticized my choices, or told me I wasn't enough, in a yard big enough for a dog, Marcus spent weekends rebuilding the porch railing. I planted tomatoes that didn't survive the first frost and replanted them in the spring. Ruth started coming for Sunday dinner. Every week, without fail, she'd bring a pie or a casserole and stay for 3 hours. And we'd eat at the kitchen table while Marcus asked her questions about running a business that she answered with the patience of a woman who'd been waiting decades for someone to care. Sunday dinners became a thing. Margot drove up from Atlanta once a month. Linda came with her husband. The Hendersons from Birch Street showed up so often that their daughter started calling me Aunt Beth. It was a family built from scratch, held together by choice. In February, I told Marcus I was pregnant. He put down his drill, walked across the half-finished nursery, and held me without saying anything for about 4 minutes. When he finally pulled back, he was crying. Happy tears, the quiet kind that runs straight down. Margot claimed the title Aunt Margot before the first ultrasound was done. I hung our wedding photo in the living room. Not a professional shot. One of the nurses had taken it on her iPhone. The angle was slightly off, the lighting was harsh, but in the frame, 214 people crowded into a small Baptist church, every face turned toward Marcus and me, every single one of them smiling. No one in that photo was performing.
No one was curating an image. They were just there. My family didn't get smaller after the wedding. It got real. 8 months after the wedding, I found something in the mailbox. Not a text, not a voicemail, a postcard. The front showed a painted largemouth bass jumping out of a lake, the kind you'd find on a gas station spinner rack off the interstate, the kind my father and I used to laugh at on our way to the fishing dock when I was 12. I turned it over. His handwriting, cramped, all capitals, the same way he'd labeled everything in the garage my whole life. "I'm proud of you, Dad." 5 words, no explanation, no apology, no mention of my mother. I stood at the mailbox holding that postcard for a long time. The mail carrier was already 2 houses down. A cardinal sat on the fence and watched me like it had somewhere better to be. I went inside, sat on the couch, cried for 5 minutes. Then I put the postcard in the kitchen drawer where I keep things that matter. The recipe Ruth wrote out for me on a napkin, the ultrasound printout, Marcus's vows on a folded piece of notebook paper. I didn't call my father back. I wasn't ready, but I didn't throw the postcard away. Dean told me later that Jerry had started seeing a therapist, just 2 sessions so far. That's 2 more than he'd gone his entire life. The therapist's office was in the next town over. Dean said Jerry drove 25 minutes each way because he didn't want Diane to know. My father isn't ready yet, and neither am I. But at least he's using his own words now, not hers. That postcard sits in the drawer, waiting, the same way I waited for 31 years, except now the terms are mine. I used to think setting a boundary meant I was a bad dyer, that putting distance between myself and my mother was a character flaw, something selfish, something broken in me. I carried that belief for most of my life, like a stone in my pocket, heavy enough to feel, but small enough to ignore.
I don't carry it anymore. If you're listening to this and you recognize Diane and someone you love, a mother, a father, a sibling, anyone, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm not a therapist. I'm a pediatric nurse from a small town in Georgia who got married in a church full of people her mother didn't invite. But I will tell you what I learned. You cannot love someone into being safe. You can show up every time. You can forgive every lie. You can absorb every insult, return some fall, attend every dinner, and they will still choose control over connection because that's the only language they know. The only person you can make safe is yourself. My wedding wasn't perfect. The flowers were half silk from a hospital waiting room. The cake was from Ruth's restaurant, lemon pound cake, not the 3-tiered fondant one I'd originally ordered. My uncle cried through the entire walk down the aisle. The speaker crackled. The food was served on aluminum trays. And the best photo from the whole day is blurry. But every single person in that church chose to be there. Nobody was guilted. Nobody was threatened. Nobody was performing. That is what love looks like. Thank you for listening to my story. I told it not because I wanted revenge. I told it because somewhere out there, someone needed to hear that they don't need permission. You don't need anyone's permission to build a life that's yours. One last thing before I go. If my story reminded you of someone you know or someone you are, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell me what boundary have you been afraid to set? Or if you've already set one, what did it cost you? And was it worth it? If you connected with this story, hit subscribe and check the description for more stories like mine. There's one about at a funeral. Trust me, you'll want to hear that one too. See you there.